Zhang Yi and Yuan Kongye were displeased with Bian Junwu's plan to use the headquarters of the Snow Worship sect as bait to lure all the zombies in Tianhai City. And upon hearing this, Wei Dinghai couldn't help but laugh, mock and ask Zhang Yi and Yuan Kongye in a teasing manner, "Shouldn't you two be so excited? Looking at the entire Tianhai City, you have the most people from your sect. So it is reasonable to choose this place as the battlefield." Facing Zhang Yixian's question, Bian Junwu replied expressionlessly, although it seems a bit cold-blooded to say this. But in fact, there are indeed considerations in this regard. What's more, you don't have any perfect protective equipment like the other four forces. But you don't have to worry too much, because now you have the armed forces of the other various forces here to guarantee your safety to the greatest extent. Zhang Yixian gritted his teeth and said word by word as he clenched his raised fist tightly. "But won't all the zombies in the entire Tianhai City gather here?" Bian Junwu just adjusted his posture and replied coldly and calmly, "If it is really as you just said, that would be the most ideal result. We all hope to solve the zombie problem in Tianhai City once and for all." Zhang Yixian suddenly raised his voice and shouted angrily, "What about our sect members? What do you think of their lives?" At this point, Xiao Honglian cut in, adding her thoughts and questioning Zhang Yixian with a playful look. "Zhang Yixian, it's time for you to be more rational," she said. "Why don't you think about it carefully? If the people in Jiangnan district don't use this method to deal with the zombies, then, with time, won't your Snow Worship sect disappear from the map anyway?" She spread her hands and continued lightly, "Even if we, the other forces, are at the end of our ropes, we still have one last option. Our last resort, and that is to completely seal our people in our shelters. With those military-level equipment in our facilities, no matter how many zombies there are, they won't be able to break through. But what about you? With so many of you relying on such crude fortifications, do you really think you can hold out for long?" Although Xiao Honglian's voice was a little sarcastic, her expression was serious, because everyone present could understand that what she said was the cruel truth of Tianhai City. If there was any force in Tianhai City that would undoubtedly disappeared first because of the zombies, it would definitely be the Snow Worship sect. Zhang Yixian's face became even paler as he turned his gaze towards Xiao Honglian, and replied desperately, "That's not a reason to use my people as bait." Bian Junwu took a few steps forward, closing the distance between himself and Zhang Yixian, and in his usual cold tone, he finally spoke up. "Why can't you people from the Snow Worship sect be used as bait?" Zhang Yixian and Yuan Kongye were stunned when he said this. Why can't they be used as bait? Can such a question be asked directly? They both wondered. "Let me ask you then, do you have a better solution?" Bian Junwu questioned. He stared intensely at Zhang Yixian and said coldly, "We have traveled thousands of miles from Jinling to come here to face the zombie crisis with you. Now all 7 of us are here. The entire armed forces of the other forces are also here. If you say that your congregants are bait, then why are we not also considered as bait? Did I let you face this crisis alone?" Bian Junwu's sonorous and powerful words directly made Zhang Yixian speechless. That's right. Bian Junwu and his people have no grudges against the Snow Worship sect. They didn't come all the way here to find trouble. Instead, they came to help the local forces in Tianhai City to solve the zombie crisis. Zhang Yixian continued to grit his teeth. Although he could understand Bian Junwu's choice and thought process, his expression was still somewhat indignant. At this moment, Zhang Yi slowly stood up and said, "You have to know that we, the combatants, are the ones guarding the front line. Even if we have to die, we will die first." Zhang Yi took a moment to look at each leader of every base, before finally settling his serious gaze on Zhang Yixian. "We have so many armed forces, all of which have come to protect your followers. What else are you dissatisfied with?" Of course, Zhang Yi was just saying polite words. You see, if an accident really happens at that time, the others will be reluctant to escape because their respective armies are too large. But Zhang Yi and his team have few people, so they have no scruples. Zhang Yixian's expression was a little struggling. He seemed to understand that they had no right to refuse this matter. Bian Junwu explained to him, which was already giving him face. So he finally gave in helplessly and asked through his gritted teeth, "Okay, I understand. But Mr. Bian, you must give us a convincing battle plan." Seeing Zhang Yixian's compromise, Bian Junwu pushed his large dark toad-shaped sunglasses. "Don't worry. I've already thought of the battle plan. The basic planning method is similar to surrounding the corpses and attacking for reinforcements, but now it seems that it is more like surrounding the food and attacking for reinforcements. Since the opponent they faced this time was a creature with low IQ, it was relatively simple to formulate a battle plan." Bian Junwu, who had mastered the structure and habits of the zombies, already had a complete battle plan. He immediately explained his ideas to everyone. First, after everyone had gathered at the Snow Worship Sect, they would attract all the zombies in Tianhai City to gather there. Due to the numerous directions at which the zombie tide will attack, all the 5 major forces would defend around the Snow Worship Sect and lure the zombies underground to attack also. And when they do, Bien Junwoo and his entire team would form a decapitation team to go underground and kill the Corpse Kings. They had already succeeded in this plan once, proving that it was indeed feasible. Bien Junwoo said this, and rarely pulled the corner of his mouth into a smile. Everyone thought this plan was a cold joke. Good fellow, you want us to be food to attract zombies, right? Zhang Yi thought with his arms crossed, an ugly, dejected expression written all over his face. Xing Tian, on the other hand, crossed his legs and asked incredulously, "Is that it? This is the huge trap? Just waiting for the zombies to jump in?" Bien Junwoo's expression was very calm, but full of confidence. After all, it is a group of creatures with low intelligence. As long as we find the right method, it is not that difficult to deal with. Bien Junwoo said it very easily, but everyone present felt a huge pressure. Zhang Yi suddenly spoke up at that moment. It sounds quite simple, but if all the zombies in Tianhai City are attracted here, how many will there be? Tens of thousands? Hundreds of thousands? Or millions? Relying on us, relying on an almost dispensable defensive fortification to block it. The pressure is not ordinary. Although Zhang Yi was not afraid of the zombies, they would be unimaginably outnumbered. And as the saying goes, an ant might be at the bottom of the food chain, but too many ants can bite an elephant to death. Zhang Yi knew that without the solid defense of his shelter, it was not his strong suit to fight in the streets or in the tall buildings in the city center like the Snow Worship Sect. Bien Junwoo stood tall with his arms folded, and replied, "When the time comes, you will need to fight to the death. After all, this is for your own city." Bien Junwoo's words were correct, and he couldn't say anything else. After all, Tianhai City is their territory. After solving the zombie crisis, the 5 major forces would obviously be the biggest beneficiaries. Zhang Yixian looked at everyone present with suspicion and said coldly, "I'm afraid that some people will deliberately let us unprotected, causing our Snow Worship Sect to suffer heavy losses. What should we do then?" Xiao Honglian looked at Zhang Yixian with disdain and sneered. "Zhang Yixian, please stop being suspicious. When that time really comes and the zombie army attacks, who could dare not act accordingly and let your sect face everything alone? Isn't that courting death?" Zhang Yixian thought about it, and it was indeed as Xiao Honglian said. Even if they wanted to let the sect face this demise alone, the rest of the forces would eventually face the same in the future. It was evident that everyone present was counting on this plan to succeed in the end. Bien Junwoo looked at everyone and asked, "So, do you still have any opinions?" Upon hearing the question, no one had any opinions or objections to add. After all, this city was their home and the zombie tide was primarily their battle to begin with. At this moment, Yuan Kongye, who had not spoken, said slowly, "While attracting zombies, I hope to protect those who have no fighting ability, especially the children." Yuan Kongye had a point. After all, the followers of the Snow Worship Sect were not afraid of death. If necessary, they could sacrifice their lives to fight for their beliefs. But there are still many women and children in the sect, and they neither had the ability to fight, nor could they be just left unprotected for the zombies to tear them apart. When it comes to children, a strange look appeared on Bien Junwoo's face, but it disappeared in an instant. "No problem. Where is the safest place here? You can make room for children who can't fight. People under the age of 14, excluding 14, can hide there. As for the others, they have to assist the army in defending against the zombie tide. Only those young children can hide in this safe place, and others are not allowed, because others need to be used as bait to attract the zombie tide." Yuan Kongye replied that they would use this very church as a place of refuge, since the St. John's Cathedral was located in the center of the entire sect area and is also the safest area. Yuan Kongye then clasped her hands together and began to pray devoutly at the cross hanging above the altar. God will protect his devout people. After talking about almost everything, Bien Junwoo began to arrange the defense line. In the 4 directions of southeast, southwest, northwest, and northeast, the 4 forces were responsible for defending 1 direction each. And although Zhang Yi's team were of only 5 combatants, they were all elite, so no one doubted their ability to guard their section assigned. Everyone had no objection to this, but they just had some arguments about the defense work between each other. If that got settled, then they could finally determine their defensive plan. Bien Junwoo distributed communication devices to everyone. This was an advanced communication device that could directly contact the Nebula satellite system. Even in a very harsh environment, the communication effect can be maintained. On the battlefield, communication was very important. This device can ensure that the 5 forces could communicate in time and cooperate. This battle may be a bit long, and it won't be over in a day or two. Everyone should be prepared for a protracted war. Bien Junwoo reminded everyone. In fact, he didn't need to say it. Everyone knew this. They all knew that they were going to live in that area for the next few days. And as for rations, Zhang Yi wasn't bothered. Although the living environment was much worse than the shelter, they can rest in their vehicle. His team also had enough food, and the vehicle's heater was enough to provide them with warmth, so it was not particularly difficult. After discussing for several hours, everyone finally reached a consensus. Zhang Yi thought of Zhokir, and he immediately had an idea in his mind. If the time comes, Zhokir would stay in the church and be under the protection of Yuan Kongye. And as the leader of a force, he still has the power to arrange such a thing for a person. After the meeting, he approached Yuan Kongye with a smile. "Miss, I have to trouble you with one thing." Yuan Kongye raised her head and turned towards Zhang Yi. Her pupils were deep and bright, bottomless but as bright as the night sky, giving people a feeling of sinking. Although she had been expressionless and rarely spoke even in the meeting, it was difficult for Zhang Yi not to notice the nominal leader of the snow worship sect. Zhang Yi was full of curiosity about Yuan Kongye and her abilities. But now wasn't the time to indulge in such curiosity. Before Yuan Kongye could speak, Zhang Yixin quickly stood between the two. He looked at Zhang Yi calmly with a programmed smile on his lips. "Mr. Zhang Yi, I don't know what's wrong with you or what you want, so just tell me and I'll help you. My leader is devoted to serving the gods and won't be distracted by other chores." Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows. Isn't Zhang Yixin's desire to protect Yuan Kongye too strong? There must be something fishy between the two of them. Maybe they are a couple. Zhang Yi was very dissatisfied with this, but he didn't care about other people's private lives. So he said, "Well, it's like this. Among the people I brought was a doctor with excellent medical skills." Zhang Yi paused momentarily, then seconds later he continued with a serious tone. "She is my girlfriend, but she is not a mutant and has no fighting ability. So I hope to let her stay with your leader lady. How about it?" Zhang Yixin frowned with some displeasure when he heard the title leader lady. So he asked Zhang Yi in a respectful manner to be careful about how he addressed his leader. Sorry. I thought people who serve the gods did not care about the red tape of the secular world." Zhang Yi smiled with sarcasm in his words as he nervously scratched the back of his head. Zhang Yixin did not want to have a conflict with Zhang Yi. Among the major forces in Tianhai City, he was most afraid of the mysterious Zhang Yi, not the other 3 with large armed teams. And after he destroyed West Mountain Base and went toe-to-toe to repel the coalition forces of the other forces, Zhang Yixin could not judge Zhang Yi's background. At this time, Yuan Kongye stepped forward and said slowly, "Of course. At this time, Mr. Zhang can still let his girlfriend come to the battlefield, which shows that you attach great importance to this battle. You even let your girlfriend risk her life. Besides, doctors are very important support staff. Let her come to the church and stay with us." Zhang Yi looked at Yuan Kongye and said with a smile, "Looks like the leader is still reasonable. Well, this matter is settled then. And since she will be here, I will do my best to protect the safety of the church. So this is a good thing for everyone." After that, Zhang Yi turned and left the church. Yuan Kongye and Zhang Yixin stared at Zhang Yi's back. Their eyes were meaningful, especially Zhang Yixin, who still looked at Zhang Yi with a hint of fear. He is really the biggest destabilizing factor in Tianhai City. I hope he won't become our enemy, Zhang Yixin murmured to himself. This was the reason why Zhang Yixin was intimidated and wary of Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi's rise is too incredible, and most importantly, everything he does is extremely surprising as well. His life before and after the apocalypse were extremely far at both ends not to notice. Unlike other base leaders, Zhang Yi left the church and was about to go back to find Zhokir and the others to tell them the results of the meeting. But at this moment, he caught a glimpse of a familiar figure. Zhang Yi subconsciously looked over to his side, and the man also looked back. Their eyes crossed in the air, and Zhang Yi immediately raised his eyebrows, a little surprised. "Li Jian?" Zhang Yi saw a skinny middle-aged man wearing black-framed glasses, passing by the church with a tired look. When Li Jian saw Zhang Yi, a flash of surprise flashed in the depths of his eyes. But soon he turned his head and walked away as if he didn't know Zhang Yi. "Li Jian? Why is he here? And wearing the clothes of a snow worship priest?" Zhang Yi thought they had long been eaten by zombies in Yuelu community. But how wrong he was. Anyway, he didn't care too much. After all, he and Li Jian were not very familiar with each other. Zhang Yi came to where they parked their vehicle. Zhang Yi walked up to the others and told them the content of the meeting. After listening to it, everyone was not too surprised. After all, when they came, they also guessed that this would be the result. They just didn't expect that they might have to live here for a while. There will naturally be some inconveniences. So Zhang Yi asked everyone to make do with it temporarily. He will also get 2 cars to use as washrooms. One for men and one for women. After all, they were not short of resources, so there is no need to make their lives too hard. Zhang Yi said as he looked at Zhokir, "You can rest with Liang Yu in the car first. Then, I will take you to the church after the battle begins. The leader of the snow worship sect is there, and they will definitely fight to the death to protect their safety if it comes to it. If we need treatment, we will come to you." Zhokir nodded. Okay, no problem. This was the first time Zhokir had participated in such a large-scale war, so she was a little nervous and a little excited. She felt that she could finally use her abilities and prove her worth. In the future, they may face more crisis. So the sooner she goes to the battlefield and adapt to this environment, the more she can help Zhang Yi. In addition, there are a few more things I want to tell you. Zhang Yi's tone became a little low, and his face became serious. Seeing Zhang Yi's serious demeanor, Zhokir blinked and straightened her posture. Zhang Yi had her undivided attention. Zhang Yi turned his head from left to right and right to left, looking around, and after confirming that no one was nearby, they both went inside the vehicle. After closing the car door, he said to Zhokir that Yuan Kongye is not an ordinary person. She can help people awaken their superpowers, but I am not very confident in her abilities. First of all, remember that once she offers to help you awaken, you must refuse. Do you understand? Zhokir lowered her eyelids, pondered for 2 seconds, and then slowly nodded. Zhang Yi knew that Zhokir was a little disappointed. Zhokir also hoped that she could become a superhuman, so that she could help Zhang Yi more, instead of just praying silently at home for Zhang Yi's safe return as in the past. But since her man said so, she would listen to his instructions honestly. Zhang Yi delicately touched her face, stared into her eyes and reminded her carefully, "There is no free lunch in this world. All the gifts of fate have been secretly marked with a price. So you must not be greedy for small gains, otherwise you will suffer a big loss sooner or later." Zhokir smiled sweetly. "I'll remember it. Look at you. Are you so worried about me?" Zhang Yi smiled. "It's not that I'm worried about you, but I care about you too much." You see, Zhang Yi and Zhokir met the earliest in the apocalypse, and the two have been together for almost half a year. Although at the beginning, Zhang Yi only saw Zhokir as a tool, only for her usefulness as a doctor and as someone to satisfy his sexual needs when he was lonely and cold. But as of now, things had changed drastically, and he had come to care greatly about Zhokir. Although it was not love, it was somewhat close to it. So if there's a possibility that Yuan Kongye's ability could endanger her life, Zhang Yi's standard was to eliminate that possibility. When the others outside saw the two showing off their affection towards each other, Uncle Yu and Chunlei had a playful look on their faces. But Liang Yu couldn't help but turn her head uncomfortably to the side with a strange expression. Back inside, Zhang Yi continued that in addition to what he said, there was another thing Zhokir needed to do also. She needed to keep an eye on Yuan Kongye. Zhokir tilted her head. "Do you think there is anything wrong with her?" Zhang Yi thought for a while and replied, "Her existence itself is a big problem. In short, you should pay more attention to all her actions in secret, and tell me when the time comes. You see, Yuan Kongye's ability, blessing, was too abnormal, and as long as she can attract enough believers, she can create a large-scale mutant army. Such a person, Zhang Yi believes anyone would naturally be afraid." But Zhang Yi couldn't tell why he felt strange about her. Maybe it was just out of caution, and he was vigilant to all possible powerful enemies. But there was something odd and ominous about her. This was nothing but a gut feeling, okay? I understand. This task was not a big problem for Zhokir.